She's okay. Ready?
Ready.
Hello. Okay, we're here with Steve Swann from History Matters. And Steve, tell me a little bit about your background.
I've had about 45 years in the technology industry. A lot of that has been in broadcasting and communications. And that's where I got my background in history, because I started down the road of documentary production and did a lot of research, particularly in U.S. history and Western history.
Awesome. So, okay, and a little you have to tell a little bit about the little secrets of you, not secret, but your background of working with Apple in the 80s.
I was asked to become a telecommunications manager for Apple in 1987. Worked with Apple in that capacity for about a year or two, and then they asked me to become general manager of Apple Television. And Apple Television was a internal communications department where we would evangelize and promote Apple products and Apple's place in the broadcast market. And we would also then put together programming for communications to Apple internal and to Apple's vendors and partners. So we had a private satellite network, and we had a small studio on the Bandley campus in what was referred to as the Bandley 4 building.
And you used to I love hearing about you used to interview tech minds, right?
Right. We would bring in all of the who's who of technology and put together programs,
which I find is fascinating because that's probably massively changed since then.
Oh, it has. I had a great opportunity to meet Bill Warner, who was at that time, it was a very small company called Avid. And we helped to evangelize and get Avid on the road to prosperity. And just a few years after then, Avid became pretty much the buzzword in Hollywood. And most productions started using Avid. Now, we've come a long way since then. There's a lot more companies, and Adobe Premiere, and there's a bazillion people now involved in nonlinear editing, and it's pretty much the standard in all video production now. But back then, it was pretty rare.
Well, and I mean, so your passion for history and your passion for production, you're kind of wanting to merge together. And through that, you found that, you've searched a lot of people's histories. You've learned that there's probably a better way to write your history than just keeping massive bookshelves full of daily
20 million pictures on your hard disk.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's becoming a big problem for people. I think it's important for everybody to write a history. I think the big situation and problem that people run into is, it's how to eat an elephant. And I think the best way is just to start out with something simple. Just take a few pages and put something down. And that's why I ended up putting together a small outline just to help people say, look, put 10 pages down and answer a few questions. I think everybody needs to, it's a good reflection, as well as leaving something for your posterity, for your kids and others to understand a little bit about what your life was about. I know I'd love to have that from a lot of my ancestors, but very few of them have done that.
Yeah, I mean, 10 pages doesn't seem as daunting, but I mean, what is daunting is what do you put on those pages? Like how do you decide what to narrow down or what's important?
Well, and that's why I kind of put together just a brief outline. Talk about your early history as a kid, how you grew up, your parents, your family, where you lived, your school, later on, who you married, your career, the experiences that you've had, especially the ones which are most key to identifying, why you believe what you believe, why you did what you did, why you made the choices that you made. Those are things I think that kids need to have. If you think back on your own life and say, if somebody would have told me X when I was 10 or 12 or 16 or 18, how important would that have been if you had that information?
True. I'm trying to think. Yeah, because most of the histories I get when I look at what we have are just someone's memory of someone else's memory
Yeah.
summarized. And you don't get much from finding out, that someone raised sheep and I don't know, something super simple. They were good at ice cream. They're like, great, awesome. My family has a history of ice cream making.
Well, I'll give you a good example of my family. I did not know my grandfather on my father's side. My father had a really interesting experience, somewhat devastating, but unique. When he was growing up in the late 20s and early 30s, his father was a British sergeant in India. And for some reason, which I'm still trying to determine, his mother left the family. The father, being a sergeant in the British Army in India, didn't know what to do with 3 kids. And so he brought them back to England. And as was traditional, if you couldn't take care of your kids, he put them in an orphanage, almost like a parking spot for his kids, and then went back into the army and to India. And so I end up with this big blank spot in my history, my dad's history, and he disappeared. My grandfather just disappeared. And many, many, many years later, 30, 40, 50 years, we find out where he's at. Well, I managed to get a hold of, from his third wife, his passports. And so just looking at 5 or 6 passports between 1938 and 1950, I gleaned a whole lot of information about where he was, what he was, you could speculate about what he was doing, because during the war years, having a passport that shows you in Cairo or Baghdad or Libya is kind of unique.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess you could kind of piece together those dates because on the passports, they show when he traveled to those locations, right?
Right. And in the middle of a war with, armies warring against each other in all of those areas, that was not exactly a tourist destination back then.
No, but I guess you could piece together battles if you looked at the whole broader picture, where he was at, what he was involved in, and things like that. That's super fascinating. And he went and got remarried after he put his kids in the orphanage.
Well, yeah, he got remarried in Libya about 1946 or 7. And that didn't last too long. And then he got married again in the early 50s. But it's fascinating. I also got his papers from the Army, which showed that in 1939 he left the Army, but he was a communications expert. And so he's still traveling around all these Mideast areas, not in the British Army anymore, but as a private citizen with a communications background. You can start to speculate on all sorts of reasons why he would be doing that.
Especially with your passion for debugging the history.
Yeah, I mean, everything from being a terrorist to being a British spy, you can go wild with all sorts of speculation. But it's interesting. Well, on those few pieces of paper, you get an interesting little view into
That's
what
a lot of
be.
stories just from a few pieces of paper that you can get. So it doesn't have to be numerous amounts of facts and history to make your story.
And at the very least, just take a few key pictures, take some certificates, put your birth certificate in, school certificates, picture of your passport, picture of your license. I mean, a lot of information. Now, it's always better if you can put a narrative to a lot of these things, and especially as you get into the deeper meanings. As we always say, the who, what, where, when, the how, those are all important. But I think the why is the most important question you can answer in your history.
And the why, the why would be like why you did certain things, or why you, like, I guess that's because your grandfather, he left you a whole of why.
Yeah, lots of whys. I mean, why do you believe what you believe? If you've got a life philosophy, Why do you go to the school you went to? Why did you choose the career that you chose? I think when we're young children or young adults, we're always trying to answer, why am I doing this? Or why is this happening to me? Or why should I do this? Or why should I marry this person? Or why should I marry that person? Or why should I choose this career? Those are the questions I think you need help with.
Yeah. And I guess I can imagine at least writing that down. Cause I had a personal history course, sorry, in college. And at least getting that down for my first 20 years was kind of like like at least that part's done. If I never do anything else, I have that done, and I don't have to really recall my childhood a whole lot. And so that was it was emotionally and just not the stressor on my back. It's in garage if anything ever happened to me. But okay, so what are the best ways to capture this information, to catalog it?
Well, everybody's got a phone now, so pictures are really good. And since a lot of the pictures are geolocated, you get them time-stamped and geolocated, that information now travels with all of those pictures. So that's good to do.
Steve, hold on real quick. I totally forgot my charger and my phone. The computer's about to die.
I'm gonna grab a drink. Okay, be right back.
Sorry, I meant to have that already ahead of time. I'm going to rearrange everything.
Okay. To kind of illustrate the why, I think we're in an interesting historical situation right now with the election, and the Constitution gets brought up, and everybody's asking a lot of why questions, and I think that's a good place for people to start looking at their lives and saying, can I answer some of these why questions? And that's, I think, a good place where people can start to delve in deeper to decisions they've made in their life and what they can pass on. And I would say when you're writing your history, answer those questions for yourself and for your kids.
And maybe your grandparents, if you happen to know the why, because
if you can talk to them, that's great.
Awesome. Okay, and you created a PDF, right?
Yes.
And so I will make sure we get that shared out. We'll probably do it from your Facebook page and then share it over to ours, and make sure everyone has access to that. And it's super awesome. It's only 4 pages long. 4 pages? Yeah. And just basically breaks down everything you just talked about. My early life, my religion and life and philosophy, my education, my friends, my marriage, my family life, my work and career, and my interests and hobbies. And basically, are you saying 3 pages for each category to 4 pages?
That's up to you.
Oh, that's up to you. Okay.
Yeah, you can make this book 4 or 5 pages long or 400 or 500 pages long. But as I say, you want people to read this. You want your kids to look at it. So use a narrative style, tell a story, show a picture. It doesn't have to be a lot. A few paragraphs with a picture, that could be awesome.
And you have provided a lot of those where, who, what kind of questions on here to kind of get your brain in answering you can pick which ones you want to answer. Okay, so one time I was listening to you talk, and you were talking about the pivotal moments in your life. You were saying you could pretty much break it down to, was 4?
Oh, yeah. Well, the pivotal moments are really the choices you make, the friends you choose, the people you marry, the careers you choose, the jobs you choose, the places you choose to live. those are all critical. Those big decisions of what you're going to do with your life. And some of them are kind of thrust upon you. Sometimes you take advantage of an opportunity that you're there. But I think the thing you have to remember in history, and this is what's fascinating to me when I look at history, you kind of do a forensics analysis of history of what caused this event, the people that were there, what those people knew, the capabilities those people had, the situation. That interaction creates an event in history. And if you're trying to break it down and understand why did this happen, the more you know about the people, their background, who they associated with, what they believed, where they came from, what they were taught, where they went to school. Those are all basic forensic analysis tools. And that gives you a better understanding of why the decisions happened the way they did. Today we're wrapped up in all these elections and political things. And when you look at it with that light and with those eyes, you can glean a lot of information.
And that's how you've been able to do a lot of your digging, is because people were present enough to document that stuff about their lives.
Yeah. Yes.
To help you to be able to piece those things together. So super awesome. Okay. So this is how we make journaling, or not journaling, but gathering your personal history super doable and not overwhelming. And it's probably something you could do before the end of the month if you really wanted to sit down and get it done. So thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else you want to? Oh, wait, questions. Thank you, Olivia. Okay. So Tara Lynn asks, what do you hope that your descendants learn from you? That's a great question.
That is a great question. Again, it's going back to that, why did I do the things that I did? What was my belief structure? How did I come to believe what I believe? And because young children, as parents, you hope that you can pass on to your kids enough information where their choices are good choices. And so you're always trying to figure out, how do I help my kids to make good choices? How do they become good people? And some of that is that they're going to mimic you. They're going to take a look at your life. And if they don't take a look at your life, they're going to look at someone else. They're going to look at people in history. They're going to look at movie stars or sports stars or somebody, and they're going to mimic. And they're going to look at it and say, make a decision, say, I like what this person is doing, good, bad, or indifferent. And then they're going to say, how do I copy that? Kids are great copiers.
They are. That just gave me goosebumps just thinking about it, because you're right. If you don't give them the guidance or someone to look to for advice, they're going to go find it from somebody else.
Yes, they are. And that happens all the time. So what I would hope from my descendants is to impart the good choices I made and why I made them.
And I guess that's the easiest way to get to the whys, is because that's what I always got stuck on, was like, well, how do you know what they're going to want to know? like, I don't know. I guess that's where you just follow your inspiration.
What do you want to know in life? If you were making these choices of who do I choose to marry, or what school do I go to, or what career do I pick? Those are the questions you want to know. But at different periods of your life, you're looking at different questions. A 12-year-old is going to have a totally different view of the world than an 18-year-old or a 30-year-old. And so your questions are going to change. Okay.
So Tara Lynn, do you have another question, Olivia, before I just saw Tara Lynn's? I was going to pop that one up, the other one. Okay. So Rochelle's, Morga, I hope I said your last name right. What inspirational message can you share to a group of people so that they will be inspired to keep a journal or a document, especially for younger generations?
Inspirational message.
Sounds like she's doing an activity, talking about journaling with a group.
Developing an interest in history and how you do that. I think the first place you can develop an interest is within your own family, especially if there are people that you know existed, but you don't know anything about them, and you want to find out about them. You have to develop that desire. Without desire, nothing else happens. So developing a desire and an interest, how do you foster that within your kids? And I think that comes from storytelling. If you've got stories in your family, the first thing you want to do is start to tell those stories to your kids. Just even in your own life, if you've got little anecdotal stories of how you did what you did, or how you met your spouse, or how you made that decision, start with that, and write it down, and find pictures, find documents, find things that you can associate with it, and make it interesting. Everybody needs to develop a way of telling stories.
Some have a natural talent for it.
Some do.
Yeah.
But I think you can foster it.
I think
you just have to write something down. You just have to think about it, and it doesn't have to be complicated. Find a picture you took and put a couple paragraphs or sentences down about what was happening. But think about what would be interesting. You went on vacation. This was fun because we met this person, or we discovered this. What interest did you have in an event? And write it down, because probably someone else will have the same interest.
Well, and I think that's why, that's one of the talents you have too. You can get younger kids to listen because you tell stories. You don't just say, this happened in 1800, bam, done. You tell the whole background around it, some facts. Did you know? Kind of get their brain working. Yeah.
And that's how our history was passed down from the very beginning. It was all storytelling. People memorized complete histories. Native Americans, tremendous amount of storytelling in their history.
Okay, so Tara Lynn is asking, what tips do you have for writing your own personal histories within the context of a current history?
Well, that's very good too. Current history is obviously influencing us. We all have an opinion about what's happening in history today. It comes back to expressing your feelings about what you're seeing. Do you like what's happening? Do you hate what's happening? And then asking the question, why? Why do you hate what's happening? Or why do you like what's happening? And then convey that in the story. And again, it doesn't have to be complex. It just has to be an honest indication, or an honest representation of why you hate something or why you like something. And I think that can also prompt a very introspective view from yourself, because we get caught up in the emotion sometimes of, I hate this person, or I hate what's going on, or whatever. And if you sit down and you go, well, why? And then you have to be honest with yourself that, oh, maybe it's just an emotional thing because, Joe down the street said he hated him and I like Joe.
Okay. Yeah. And that's, because a lot of people don't discuss that anymore as their why. They just state their opinion and then you never find out the background. But when you do, you find out you're more alike than you ever realized most of the times.
Yeah. And it's hard to get people to, I think, be introspective today. We get caught up in social media and the bandwagon appeal and, so-and-so's doing it, or, the influencer is saying we should do this or do that, etc. And then you've got to step back and go, why? Why am I being influenced like this? Why am I walking down this path when I should be over here or doing something else?
Yeah. And those why questions are really the connecting questions. They're the things that draw you in or draw you together. I think too, because if you can answer why, you can share.
Well, they force you to be honest with yourself. We really need to be honest with ourselves. Too much, especially in social media, is posing, and posing is not being honest.
All right. So I think we're done with questions, right? Force yourself to be honest with yourself. Write down your history, 10 pages or less. You can do it. And I thank you so much, Steve, for spending this time with us and sharing it. I love listening to Steve's stories. And we're going to be having more than that. He's working on a podcast. It's called History Matters. And it's basically, our goal is 10 to 15 minutes per podcast, right? Just to get people excited about history. Make it, you want to listen to it. But he finds the stuff on the back that the rest of the story, like,
Mr. Paul Harvey, yes.
Yeah. Just this parts you don't know. Like, you have what history books write, and then there's so many gaps that they don't fill in, or that you don't realize all these things are happening at the same time. So we'll let you guys know more about that when that's coming out. And again, thank you so much, Steve.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Okay.